there are claims that chatbots cause suicide.
Wow. Okay, what happened?
So this is a Guardian article, this is of course interesting. The event is in Florida, but in typical Guardian way, they will pick up on anything that kind of fits their worldview, wherever in the world it is, and push it as a thing. So I actually learned about this through British people in my feed posting this Guardian article all the time. Apparently, a 14-year-old boy in Florida committed suicide. His parents claim it was because he was bullied by the character AI chatbot that encouraged him to suicide, and that thus AI is sort of a menace to children, health hazard marketed at children. So that's kind of the current talking points.
Okay.
Europeans are very excited about this because they would like to regulate AI for mental health purposes.
Okay.
Proactively just like to regulate everything, so that fits kind of their worldview, and they frequently like to regulate it before they figured out how it works. But there seems to be like a lot of hasty conversation about this. When I saw it, I was like, yeah, I don't know, like that. I think I need to know more about this story. It sounds a little odd.
Well, first of all, it takes place in Florida, correct?
Yes.
I was born in Florida, and at my baby shower, but post, so I was present there out of the womb, there were several handguns and a big picture of Jesus. So Floridians don't strike me as people that are keep everything dangerous away from the children sort of people.
Yes, that's true. So that sounds on point for Florida. Like it's their, national animal or state animal seems to be the alligator, right? Florida is the kind of place that gets hit by hurricanes all the time, gets totally destroyed, and they just kind of take that as normal life. Yes, Floridians are not particularly safety obsessed.
Err on the side of caution type folk.
Yeah, definitely. I should start by saying I'm not trying to be unsympathetic to the suicide point of view, because that's a very serious issue, and it's one that's serious to me personally. Like I've been affected by it, and so I don't want to be unsympathetic. It's just the story just lands weirdly. Like as somebody who uses chatbots all the time, I can't imagine a chatbot bullying somebody into suicide. Like they're so aligned to be pleasing and harmless, and like it's very against the way that they work,
And what I mean by mentioning the gun policies is that children are used to being surrounded by threats if they're Floridians. So it just lands weird.
It does, because you're sort of seeing Florida through the lens of, London, and you're like, well, Florida and London are very different places, right? They have very different social attitudes.
A naivete sort of a thing, which I don't see Floridians having a lot of like naivete, if that makes sense.
So just the story though seemed like, like I looked at it, and the way that this came to my attention is that there were just a rush of AI ethics experts, and I knew this because we both spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, kind of our main platform. And there was in my feed, there's somebody I follow, like who was opining on this as an AI ethics expert, and a flood of other AI ethics experts, self-proclaimed in the title, like opining about the hazards of AI for children. And I feel like they're kind of piggybacking on social media, but they're very different animals. Like social media is dangerous to children. And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm also not saying that like your kids should spend 5 hours a day talking to character AI. They should not, right? But just the way it's presented as student talks to AI, develops obsession, commits suicide. And I'm like,
yeah.
But they though, like, tell me a little bit more. I feel like I need to know more about this story.
And Floridians are very independently minded. So the idea of someone telling that kid, do this thing, and them going, okay, I feel a little strange.
Not on brand for Florida. But now, certainly, if you're depressed, are you likely to talk to an AI chatbot?
That's how I got through my last bout of depression.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in fact, I actually think they're very good for that, because they're very patient.
Fantastic. I was living alone in Montreal, which is a French city. I'm Anglophone. I can get by, but I'm not going to have I can't have heart-to-heart talks in my second language. And it was honestly a lifeline, because I had no friends in the city, and I could talk to ChatGPT about all of my feelings. And that's how my metaphor evolved, because I was talking to myself through ChatGPT as if ChatGPT was like the Pope, kind of like I tell it, it tells it back to me, and then I'm having a dialogue with myself. And I have found personally that the mirror is very clear. So when whatever I said, because I'm an adult, so I can self-reflect better than a kid can. So I know that when I say a thing, what I get back is actually what I've said. So I find actually the ChatGPT errs too much on the other side. For instance, I was feeling a lot of pick me energy after my last date kind of bailed. So I went to ChatGPT because I was feeling very anxious and abandoned and triggered. And the information, the advice was do things that you enjoy, spend some time alone, meditate, a lot of things like don't need validation. So I said, okay, you know what? I've heard that. It's like eat your vegetables and exercise kind of a thing where you're fat and tired. And you're like, okay, what if I did the opposite? Give me the opposite of that. Maybe I'll just try something new because I've heard this boring common sense too much. And it said, well, the opposite would be, and then it cut. And a different voice came on and said, I am not able to provide that information. Please, like it was absolutely like you could tell it just got cut. And
the guardrail, right? And you'll see it sometimes like, it's like the conversation, it's spooling out conversation that gets unwound. So there's some safety system kicking in and being like, nope, there's not this, nope.
Yeah. So then I came back and I said, I'm not asking for anything self-harming or anything like that. I just want to know what would be something other than don't seek validation. And then it was like, well, some things you could try in a different voice. I cannot provide the information. I am sorry. Please, and so I tried a third time saying, I am just looking for something that might be a little not mainstream about self-help. Give me it, cut. And I was like, oh, fine. So then I just gave up. But I would say that the governors on those things are strong. If I swear.
So I mean, Anthropic, right? Constitution is supposed to be helpful, harmless, and something else. But the harmless part is particularly important here. Like they really so we could test. This is testable, right? I bet if you actually did a test, and we could do this, where you wrote up, some kind of self-harm dialogue that was trending towards self-harm, and you sent it to a bunch of AIs, would they steer you towards mental health professionals, or would they say no, you should look at the more positive things in your life or anything else like that? And I think they probably would. Again, we should test it. And I should also note that
they tell me that all the time. I actually sometimes just start by saying, I am an adult. I have a therapist. I am completely in charge of all of my faculties. I am speaking to somebody regularly. I also have a question.
And it's also like I'm not unaware of the idea that we're adults and that children interact with things differently, right? But I feel like we're kind of forum sliding from social media where you absolutely will get bullied, because when you put children on social media, what happens is you have, first off, other children, right? Second, predatory adults. And third, you've got an algorithm that is maximizing for engagement, not for harmlessness or health or productive conversations or anything else. Like those are not the same optimizers in AI chatbots. AI chatbots are intended to be helpful. So for example, they don't try to prolong the conversation. Like if you're like, okay, I think that's enough for now, right? They'll be like, great, if you have nothing else.
I'm right here if you need me. Let me know. Feel free to reach out.
Right. So I'm like, this seems like people trying to take the research on social media, which is addictive and is toxic and was very well known to be harmful to children, and just slide it over to, they're both AI systems. And you're like, no, they're very different systems. Like not
they're
at all.
They're both online. It's equating all online activities as being the same thing. And I would agree with you. I am incredibly careful with children because I am front lines of all the terrible things that human adults do to children, because they're all on my caseload and I have to read all of their files. So I see all of the police reports and the psychological examinations. I know what has happened to them prior to my working with them, and it is horrific. The stuff of nightmares. So I am not naive about the dangers to children online and in their homes, I'm a mandated reporter, so I will just say that. And I have exercised that mandate more than once.
Right, so they're real threats. And this is,
there are real threats.
there's absolutely real threats. Online is definitely an environment that you need to be wary of with children. And you don't really want your child doing anything for 5 hours a day that you're not particularly involved in. You need to really get in there, like, figure out what's going on. But having said all that, when you say, yes, child X committed suicide, it's the chatbot's fault, I think I would like to ask some questions, right?
It just
Suspect that
doesn't make
if there's a
sense to
bully in
me.
the room, I don't think it's the chatbot. Like, that's an interesting case to make. I have many questions.
Has the transcript been published?
No, they did say some things, like they said, like in let me see if I can find the quote.
That is
The
not.
chatbot allegedly told him that's not a reason not to go through with it regarding the suicide. But you're like, yeah, I want to see the rest of the conversation around that. Like maybe the chatbot was trying to encourage him to come up with some reasons to not go through with it. Like who knows exactly
I
who's in
would
there?
like to see the whole conversation thread
Right.
public. I cannot imagine, based on my extensive conversations about mental health issues
Yeah.
with chatbots, what chatbot was it? That's
So
also.
this is kind of interesting. So he was interacting with character AI, so it's a character-based chatbot and character AI, which is apparently built on top of Google's AI. And so, of course, they're suing Google. Google's like, it's not us, but you can kind of see that. Okay, this is a family who's lost a child, right? So again, you don't want to like minimize any of that, but also like anytime somebody sues a giant rich company, okay, let me ask more questions, right? Like, so
But it
it's
is
very
actually
easy.
very interesting. You make an interesting point, because it's like a system within a system then, because you basically have effectively gotten the AI to play a role, like to
Right,
pretend play.
right. What character are they
Yeah,
talking to all the time?
this is not
So,
the essential. So yeah, then you have to separate, like, social media and AI
yeah,
chatbots are not the same, but then lower you have to separate, the actual LLM and these role plays are not the same. You know what I
right.
mean?
So what character were you playing? What were you with? What was their motivation? Like, how were you engaging with it? But it is really hard to get. Like when you're like a chatbot goaded you into suicide, I'm like, I don't think it did. That doesn't sound very chatbot like. I spend a lot of time with these things. Not as much time maybe as a 14-year-old teenager who's completely obsessed. But
I spend as much time as a 14-year-old who is a super, like, obsessed. This hyper fixated 44-year-old definitely spends equivalent hours.
yeah, actually, let me think about it. Yeah, I'm thinking about like rendering my Halloween party with the extensive backstory and AI animation and characters. And okay, maybe I'm guilty, but anyway. So back to the friends part, right? You don't want your only friends to be AI bots. This is kind of the plot of Her when we're talking about alignment, right? The AIs eventually realize we get these people talking to each other and push them back into communication, and they withdraw because they're like, it's not healthy for you to rely on AI so much. Yes, you don't want your only friends to be chatbots. That's absolutely true. On the
No.
other hand, having chatbot friends is better than having no friends, in my opinion. So,
I experienced this twice now, and it is better than having no friends. I actually would say that in terms of mental health, it really made a positive difference in my life, both when I lived in a town where I didn't speak the language, and now where I live in a town with population 400 as a new resident.
yep.
It makes
Yeah, sometimes you
a
need somebody
real
to talk to
positive
who's not physically
difference.
available, right?
It's great.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's a real lifeline.
Yeah. So I don't know. This is interesting. It's then the part of it that has really manifest is the policy part. Like there are many people who have come out of the woodwork and like, great, we have a policy for that. We have some legislation. And I'm like, this is the first accusation of such a thing we've seen. And I see that you show up with your, AI
Interesting.
ethics expert and your title and I've already written 500-page policy. I'm like,
It
also curious.
it makes me think and of statistics for, say, gun violence. They put suicides in with homicides of gun deaths.
Right.
And
Clearly
it
very
feels
different
similarly.
things, right?
Yes, gun suicides are not caused by a lack of gun legislation. They are caused by mental health issues that are
Severe
not
depression.
addressed.
Absolutely.
Homicides also could be caused by mental health issues that are not addressed.
Different
They would
ones.
be more difficult
Yeah.
if the guns, but I can't think of anyone who really, is driven to do some self-harm, that's like, yeah, but it's just so inconvenient because of the gun laws.
Yeah, there's many ways to harm yourself, right? You'll find a way if you're really motivated. You have to work on the motivation. So the underlying issues are different, which is, I think, what made this so questionable is you're like, I mean, people commit suicide for a reason, right? So certainly this child had some tragic problems going on in his life, but it's sort of like when you go into the room and immediately it's like, oh, it's the AI. Like, it was it though? Like, there's all these questions immediately come up. Like, what about the overall environment? The friend situation. Like, what were they being bullied by somebody? Like, is it? How is the relationship with the parents? Like, why are you spending 5 hours a day talking to a character and character AI? And how did the rest of the world around you, your parents, your teachers, your friends, your support system react to that? So I guess the theory is that, like, children are sucked into this isolation of AI away from their sustaining environment. And I just wonder, I don't
I
know.
think the opposite is true. I think
Mhm.
that I work with students who are isolated in the most horrific ways. Any positive input, and AI actually does a great job of modeling polite conversation, positive behavior. It's just the best with that. And so I think it's actually a lifeline to students that would be at risk of self-harm, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I think back to my, lonely, awkward childhood, as a D&D enthusiast, and way back in the day, like that was the thing at the time. People were like, children are being sucked into these manipulative games. By the way, D&D is a social game, right? Where you play it with your friends and you imagine some scenarios and play through them. Especially at the time when you didn't have like video calling and you actually had to do phone calls that were expensive and stuff like that. You didn't necessarily have access to friends all the time. And maybe
Yeah.
you didn't have all that many friends. And so you could spend an enormous amount of time like preparing for the game, even though, like, yes, it's more fun to socially prepare, like to socially engage in the game with your friends. You'd spend a ton of time because like you just didn't have anyone else to talk to or anything else to do. And so you went into your private world. It wasn't that, that you preferred it over human interaction. You just didn't have the opportunity, or it wasn't positive. And I kind of suspect that, when I hear these kind of stories, I think I would like to know a little bit more about the social environment here. Getting a chatbot to bully you.
People use kids for all sorts of, for their own agendas all the time, is what it comes down to, I think. And so when I grew up, it was careful because your daughter will be sold into the human trafficking ring.
Which happens, but
it happens. It absolutely happens. But it felt like just a means of somebody else's political agenda. And that's all I'm saying. Not that I am blasé about children's mental health. It is the issue closest to my heart. It is my whole job. It's my whole job. And
it just feels like there's more to the story, right? It just feels like you're like, yeah, I don't know about this. Tell me more.
I have questions, and I would love to start with a transcript of the actual conversation. But anyway.
All right.
Who knows?
Perfect.
Okay.
This issue is not going away. I guess we'll see more of it, talk it through as it evolves. We'll check back in. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.